No, everybody's awake.
Okay. We'll probably start with not Tiago because he was already on the session earlier. I'll start to my left and we just have a small introduction round of each one before we get in the panel.
Hi, I'm Sahil Chalana. I'm the founder of collegedunia.com. So we are India's #1 college search engine among the top 250 websites in India. Last month we did 12 million unique visitors. If you think of all the colleges which are prominent, most private universities like Alliance, Jain, BITS, Nasi Monji, there are our partners, and that's about it. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Abhishek Desai, founder of DigiCorp and Crick Heroes. DigiCorp is a software consultancy and a startup studio based in Ahmedabad. And as a software consultancy, we work with startups and we create their products for them. So we act like a co-founder or a CTO. And as part of Startup Studio, we work on homegrown ideas and we create separate ventures for the most promising one. And one such venture is Crick Heroes, which I am the founder. And Crick Heroes is an app using which you can score your local cricket match just like an international match. So in one line, it is a Crick Buzz or Crick Info of local cricket.
Hi, good morning. This is Madhu here from Amazon Web Services. I'm the principal evangelist at Amazon Web Services. We love developers, we love mobile apps.
I'm Tiago. You already heard who I am.
So we've heard a lot what Tiago just told us this morning in terms of the number of hours we spend on our mobile phones, the apps we sort of use. But I think we're talking more in terms of, I think, the future in terms of how getting apps connected, and essentially in terms of the fact we've also been hearing in terms of that in spite of having at least about 50 apps on your phone, you don't use more than about 3 or 4 of those apps. So Madhu, do you have a perspective coming in from sort of a large company like Amazon Web Services in terms of sort of what's the sort of future in terms of this whole ecosystem of apps going to grow to?
I actually love every single app. Right? We have to love every single app developer as well, and that's what we do. But from a perspective standpoint, some of the things that we are seeing, and you can see that actually even Amazon do it in its search capabilities, is 2 different things, right? One is that there is a set of chaining capability that we are seeing that's progressively coming in, where people are tying services and integrating them into apps consistently. For example, one of the things that we have launched with an Amazon Web Services is this capability called Lex, which is our artificial intelligence bot building capability. And what happens is you have the ability to tie that into Facebook Messenger, tie that into Slack, tie that into your mobile application directly and build your bot engine right behind it. What happens is you build that entire bot once and then tie it into multiple channels. We actually call them channels. Right? You tie that, so a single bot, but tied across channels, that means your capability, your underlying integration that you want to have is available across each of these channels and platforms that are out there. That is something that we are seeing. We are also progressively seeing voice-based integration coming in because there is challenges that we believe actually voice is going to be very critical as we go along. It is hard. If you're a parent, you definitely will know your kid will want you to do something when you are washing dishes or you are watching even television and your phone is not next to it, right? And you want to have a capability. So integrating voice into mobile apps and voice into other devices that connects back to your mobile app. Like for example, there is an Alexa skill that's been built out recently that says, hey, add a reminder for me to sign the report card. Right? It actually adds a reminder into your mobile app. Right? What you did was instruct to Alexa. So there are this kind of cross integration, cross device integration, bypassing a standard touch interface, etc., that we are seeing consistently coming in. That means the user engagement, user experiences are sort of getting spread out.
Yeah, I'll add on. Yeah, I'll add on to Madhu. One of the phenomena we see is around the chaining of apps. Now, one of the reasons why this is happening is, I think if you look at the day 7 retentions of most of the apps in India, the typical day 7 retentions are 8%. That means 92% probability your app will be uninstalled within 7 days of downloading the app. So you have to develop a very high use case for the user to actually use the app. once you actually start chaining it with more services, there is a high probability that the app will be retained in your phone from the product perspective. Is this what Madhu was also feeling, right? That is why with a lot of apps you see that booking an Uber cab or booking home plumber services, they are tying up with the, different vendors on their app. And this is what we're seeing with collegedunia also, that as we tie up with more services or are more providing services like career counseling and or providing model test papers, so we are seeing higher retentions. So chaining is the way we believe the future is going to be.
So collaboration, bots, artificial intelligence, all coming in. Abhishek, you've built about 100 apps in the last 15 years. Any interesting perspectives of some apps which have worked, and what's your success of things which have never worked?
I think the apps which do not provide inherent value to users, they generally have a tendency which he explained that they have a very little shelf life according to me, right? But the point is that the apps in which you invest your time, for example popular apps like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram or any other app, these are habit forming apps. There is no external trigger which is actually telling you to use the app, and still in a day probably you'll find yourself using the app for about 5 times or 10 times a day, right? Even without any notifications or anything coming in. So the point is that people are investing their time, and once you invest more and more time in the apps, they have a larger and larger shelf life, because you know that the data which you have put in or the time which you have put in, you are going to get away with it if you uninstall the app. So my perspective to the entire thing is that app developers should always look for creating habit forming apps. And there is a very good model, hook model, it is called hook model, explained by a Stanford professor and a guy who takes a design course there, Neil. So he has written about this model, and I believe that every app developer should learn about this model more and more to increase the retention of users.
Tiago, you come from a perspective of sort of having seen the market in terms of other markets in APAC as well. What's your sense in terms of, I think we're talking about a connected world with different apps, but what about having local regional apps as well? So Indonesians would have their own homegrown sort of very popular apps, or people in Malay or people in Singapore. Is there a trend, what you see sort of, I think people not really going to those apps? What's your thought?
What I see is less and less markets having local apps. So I showed on the top 10, the fact that it's Flipkart and Hotstar there is not very common. So when I look at Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, most of the apps are global ones. The exception would be, for example, Thailand. Thailand, maybe because of the specificness of the language, or maybe, for example, Myanmar, is really, what I mean specific because the language is like Hindi, right? It's not the regular alphabet. That's the only 2 markets right now in Southeast Asia that I see local apps. And the best use case is Line. I don't know why Line is still so successful in Thailand, because it's the only, I have Line on my phone just because of Thailand, that's it. But the rest of my, India and Southeast Asia, every other country, WhatsApp works fine to try. And
even Telegram?
Yeah, I don't see Telegram.
Telegram also has a lot of local presence, like it originated from Russia, and then because of the security and all.
What I was trying to say is, I try to do business in India and Southeast Asia. When I meet a partner like you, we are able to communicate in WhatsApp in every country except Thailand. Thailand, I have to use Line. Even BBM in Indonesia, right? Used to be like this use case. I don't have BBM in my phone. I don't need BBM to have business in Indonesia. So the slide I showed about the domination of these Facebook properties, I think is spreading worldwide. I don't know how much longer Line will survive, or even Snapchat.
So Madhu, do you have any perspective of this from coming on from sort of Amazon in terms of getting any requests from large content companies who you work with as well? Because I think that's the future of India as well, because we're not a country which is sort of built with sort of only sort of, I think, one sort of language, but we've always had mediums flourish as well. So is there a different trend what we're seeing in India, or pretty much similar to what he just mentioned?
No, when it comes to, I think, content apps, I mean, when I say content, I'm talking about here media content.
Right.
So this is the likes of your Hotstar, crickets, and then when it comes to Netflix.
Sure.
When you look at, because India is an amazing place for entertainment content, right? And what we are seeing is today, for example, the number one media app in the country is Hotstar, and it's not Netflix or Prime Videos.
Yeah.
Right? They are growing, but Hotstar is like really up there. Actually, as I was just coming up, there was a statistic I was just telling him, is that I think Costa had a little over 5 million views during the India-Pakistan match. Yes. Right? I mean, imagine 5 million apps actively, concurrently looking at the game. Right? That's, I know what happened in my business when that happened, right? But it's the kind of thing that we see.
So what I was meaning was not really from a perspective of homegrown, but what I meant was it looked regional, meaning it had phonetism in regional language.
It is, Hotstar runs in multiple languages,
sure.
So I think that works well. But there's also something, what happens is these apps are growing India outside.
Yeah.
Right? So the Hotstars and the NDTVs and things like that, what you're seeing is they're developing for India, for the Indian market, and then they're able to take it to the entire Indian diaspora outside. Because that content is consumed across the world. Right? Those kinds of apps, there's a lot of engagement. I mean, coming to his point, right, is that I think there is, if you build it for that content, there is consumption in the world. It may not be at the scale of what a Facebook, which is an engagement application or a chat application is, but it definitely is able to keep users engaged. I mean, watching a match is like a 1 hour continuous engagement with ads on it. Right? Which is very different from WhatsApp chatting. Right? And the amount of ads that was delivered during that window, the amount of revenue, I mean, if you had to watch the match 5 minutes late, there was one price, and if you were watching the match live on mobile, it was like 190 rupees extra.
Sure. Right. How many apps do you have on your phone?
I didn't count them.
You haven't counted them?
I haven't counted them, but I forgot to also say that in the presentation. When I showed the stats about the latest numbers of 30 apps that people open in a month, it said that that's 1/3 of the total apps. So on average, 90 apps. That was the study. I'm not sure if I have 90.
Anyone out here in the audience has got more than about 100 apps on the phone? Million, one, about 5 or 7 hands going up. 100 apps. Everyone uses all 100. Million, do you use all of 100? So, what about the fact of sort of, I think we had this discussion in terms of apps sort of becoming this ecosystem or a connected entire environment, and you sort of touched upon that. So, give me a sense in terms of what do you think in terms of, I think, a platform like, say, a WeChat or, say, a WhatsApp, which is going to integrate multiple, I think, opportunities for services, something else, or multiple apps within an app?
Yeah, so last year I went to China, and it's pretty amazing what WeChat ecosystem is. Within WeChat, so WeChat is a combination of WhatsApp plus Tinder plus Facebook plus shopping plus book a cab plus everything. And if you look at the average time spent of WeChat, I think it's 2.5 times of that of WhatsApp. So, from that, I think there are a lot of startups which are locally homegrown, like Tapso, which are realizing that the power of one app wherein you can have multiple services, and that really driving the usage. So the connected app world is one app which is the future, which is the engine to everything, and that is the future I think we are headed to.
What's your perspective? Will you sort of have suddenly 5 such apps on your phone and you delete all the other apps, Abhishek?
I forgot the name, but one wise man said that there are 2 ways to make money on the internet. One is bundling the apps, and another is unbundling the apps. So, this is the wave right now, and primarily bundling the apps are happening because of the shortage of space, right? This is a way where probably apps like Haptic and Tabzo will work, specifically in Indian context, because people are not having, people are having smartphones, but generally, they are of 16 GB to start with, or sometimes 8 GB, and there's not a lot of space. So they have to uninstall a lot of apps simply because of space constraint. And that's why, this bundling thing will definitely work in India. But probably, probably it may not work in other market where, such is not the scenario. I would like to use a specialized app for shopping, or I would like to use a specialized app for chat, rather than, using all of it in one go.
I'll add on to it. So Collegedunia, we had an app and we crossed around 1 lakh downloads in about 4 months. what we just saw that our initial app was 5 MB. When we dropped the size to 3.5 MB,
Right.
the downloads went up by 40%. So space is one of the biggest constraints which is there in India. And if you look at Aptoide's presentation as well, Indians use Facebook Lite, and the globally users use Facebook. There's a reason why. So there is a big thing which people think about. When you make apps for India, the lighter the size, the better it is. And that is one of the reasons where bundling the apps, especially for India, really, really works.
What about your perspective on terms of sort of, I think, the whole aspect of the cloud perspective as well, coming into this whole app ecosystem as well? Where do you see that fitting in?
No, see, the cloud basically offers your underlying backend engine, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that as you start lightening your apps, you want to offload compute somewhere else, you want to offload storage somewhere else, stuff like that. So that's for us is the empowerment that we offer to any mobile app developers. We call it undifferentiated heavy lifting. Right. So what we say is there's a bunch of things in your mobile app that's, whether it's authentication, authorization, data storage, etc. A bunch of things that developers need to do that you can actually just offload and move it off to the cloud. And when it comes to artificial intelligence, now, for example, you're building a simple travel app, you're going to allow somebody to post something, a simple piece of text or a comment. You want to do moderation on the text. You want somebody to upload, like you're building a dating app, right? Somebody has to upload a picture. You want to ensure that the person is not uploading a celebrity's picture in place of them, right? You're not going to build these services on your own. It's going to take ages to build it, or the amount of compute and infrastructure you want to build in your app starts going up. So this is what we call undifferentiated heavy lifting, that we take off your app to put on our side. That's where we believe cloud services come in. And the second thing, same thing happens with the voice services. Now, what makes the most sense for us to sort of bring the capability, whether it's voice recognition or voice playback, how to integrate that. And another thing that we are also observing is, I don't know how many of you have seen these dash buttons, right? It creates a very interesting mechanism, right? It ties the ability for you to, for example, there is this person who has built this beautiful demo, right? Airbnb check-in, check-out using a dash button. I walk into an Airbnb room, I press a button, I know I'm inside. When I leave, I press the button and walk away. I don't go to the app to do anything, right? But all the interfaces happen somewhere else, right? Now what happens is the functionality is still the same, right? The underlying capabilities are still the same. But that single button, like $4.95 button that's placed in that room, handles all that capability for you in a single thing. So what's happening is you start looking at how do I achieve a certain specific piece of functionality the way customer would like to experience it, right? And then you start putting it between your app, between other capabilities that you can tie in. And then when you start doing that, you start removing functions, making your app lighter, making it simpler for the user to engage. Because even in Facebook, for example, I think there are like tens of features that you may not even use, right? There's a lot of, you go drag that and you get like 50 options to choose, groups, pages, blah, 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 and you may not necessarily use that from your mobile phone. There are people who do, there are people who don't, and that's where that thing that we look at changing coming in.
You spoke of streaming in terms of apps becoming an interesting model as well. How do you see that happening, especially within maybe a context of, I think, markets like India or some others where we sort of have phones which don't have as much sort of data?
So just before I answer to you, I went to my phone and start counting the apps, and I stopped at 100. So I didn't even realize I had more than 100 apps in my phone. So I think that study is right, on average 90. Yeah, the streaming of apps, I think is very important. So I didn't put that in the slides because I didn't have enough time. I showed you the drop of internet costs, right? The mobile gigabyte. What I didn't show you is what the Chinese brands have done to the local brands. So there's so much competition right now. I think in the top, according to IDC, in the top 5 smartphone brands in India, there's no local brand anymore. So this has pushed the price of the devices really low, and the local brands are really trying to cater to the low, very low. I cannot share with you the name, but one of the meetings I had this week in India was with this manufacturer that is trying to create a new category. So there's the feature phone, there's the smartphone, and he's coming out with something in the middle. And this in the middle, when I was talking about preloading the App Store, he asked me, okay, what's the size of your App Store. I said, oh, 13 megabyte. And then they said, oh, no way. We cannot put 13 megabyte in this device. And then I said, well, I do have a version of Aptoide called Aptoide Lite, similar to Facebook Lite. It's almost like a HTML5 page. And then he said, oh, what's the size? I said, 0.5 megabyte. Okay, that's what I want.
You got your order?
Not yet. The meeting was just in Bombay a few days ago. But this tailors to your question and the cloud base. So the drop of the gigabyte went down, so there's no problem with 1 gigabyte per day to stream whatever you want to your phone. Now the problem is the data storage. If you want to keep the phone really cheap, then you have to give very low storage on the device. And if you do that, you cannot install an app like Aptoide with more than 10 megabyte. So what you can do, you stream. The example I gave from booking.com, I think it's very early days. I'm aware Google has not come out and say, in terms of numbers, how is this app streaming test going? But it's a solution. It doesn't take any size of your phone, and everything is running from the cloud. I think there's huge potential there.
So just to try and make the conversation a little lighter, we spoke about the fact that I think there were 3 or 4 companies which occupy the largest share of people using their mobile phones, yeah? 80%.
80% of web users right now in India, 80% mobile.
Has there been any thought in anyone's mind, maybe your mind as Aptoide or whatever, to sort of say that if at one level there's a huge debate in terms of, I think, having not much space on your phone, and if you sort of try and sort of see that the maximum space is probably occupied by those largest guys on your phone, right? So the WhatsApp, the Messenger, and the Facebook is taking the largest chunk of it as well. Is there a way to sort of, I think, put them all together and sort of do something? Any thought?
Sorry, putting them together, who?
The largest giants together, because they're occupying the largest amount of sort of space on your phone as well.
Sorry.
Which is Facebook, which is WhatsApp,
yes.
Messenger. So,
Yes.
so they occupy the largest amount of space on your phone as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So is there a thought to sort of combine them as well? If we talk about a connected world, to sort of say that, hey.
Oh, you mean those top players becoming one?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think governments usually don't like these monopolies, right? So I think if Facebook wants to buy Snapchat, I don't think they will be approved. And talking about our perspective, we don't like a market where there's only one choice, okay? Today when you go to watch streaming something, you can choose between Netflix and Hotstar. If you want to use a messaging app, you can choose between Facebook and Snapchat. I think, for example, in the apps world, you should also be able to choose. I don't know if I answered your question.
So you're going to have, what you're saying is you're going to certainly have more apps. Connected apps are going to be there as well.
Yeah, but I think this is what Facebook is going to do next, because it's very easy to realize that people are going to have less apps and more of bundling. So maybe Facebook will say, okay, let's start a third-party app store, and probably dominate over Google Play, because the amount of control which Google Play has on your phone is tremendous, and the kind of permissions, like they don't permit Aptoide. And a lot of others, you might just get disapproved for being, violating any random of services. So it's more like dictatorship which Google Play has on your phone. So maybe Facebook will start its own service wherein it bundles all the app, and I have to have my app on Facebook App Store. So I'm sure in the coming 2 to 3 years, Facebook will come out with this kind of a thing.
They tried it once using Facebook apps actually.
Okay.
There was a time when apps on Facebook were quite popular. For example, Zynga, the entire company was built because of that, right? And it is nowhere to see now. But I mean, they have tried it on web. They are yet to try it on mobile. And to add to the answer he gave to the last question, I think there are certain technical difficulties as well in bundling the apps. It's not quite always that simple. For example, Facebook, even though the main app is huge, it is probably more than 100 MB. On iPhone, and still there is a separate messenger app, because they could not bundle all the features of the messenger app. They wanted the messenger app as separate because it also has a separate utility. So there may be people who are simply using the messenger apps far more than the Facebook app. That can also be one of the reasons.
No, it's just interesting because, I don't have Messenger in my phone.
Right.
I have WhatsApp. Why? Because as soon as I put Messenger in my phone, my family sees I'm online and they think, oh, this guy is free to chat with me and not right now in an event. So it's interesting your point of view. If they would bundle Facebook with WhatsApp, I might uninstall WhatsApp from my phone. I don't want to have that messaging, social messaging from family to disturb my workday.
It's like they want to cater separate white spaces. They don't want to create bundle all the white spaces together and try to give one solution. Probably that can be.
That's all we have time for. I'm told that we're running out of time, so we can check if there are some questions from the audiences.
Any questions from the audience? I think we might be able to take just one in the interest of time. We're way behind schedule this morning. Okay, let me pass my mic to you.
My name is Madhav. We've been speaking about third-party app stores. I would like to understand what kind of steps the third-party app stores are taking to ensure that the apps are secure.
Thank you for your question. So we've been doing this for 6 years. So we have our own security platform. It's called Sentinel. So any APK file uploaded to my platform, the first step I do is I check it with 6 antivirus tools. The next step, I compare the file, the fingerprint of the file with one from Google Play. And the last step, I have my own malware database. Is it a perfect system? No. From time to time, we have some cracks. But for example, I can tell you, we're very proud when somebody complains to us that they tried to put an app from Google Play in our platform and we didn't accept it. Maybe it didn't have virus or malware, but for example, we're very strict. We don't like adware, like very annoying adware. Or like we're very careful with in-app purchases using SMS, those ones that almost automatically. So we have several apps in Google Play that right now we don't allow in our platform. To give an idea of how much we are attacked in terms of malware and virus, every year after Christmas, we have a huge increase in app submissions. So January this year, there were 800,000 files submitted to my platform. We only approved 150,000. So 650,000 were infected some way and we blocked it. And sometimes we go as extreme as block some mail termination. So for example, if you are someone trying to create an account in Aptoide using the .ru email address from Russia, you can't right now. It was just a quick fix because we were tired of being attacked by Russian accounts. Yes.
All right, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, gentlemen. May I request Senthil from GMASA to please come on stage and present mementos to all the speakers, thanking them for their time and insights this morning. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for that really wonderful panel. Our first panel at GMASA 2017. And Senthil, gentlemen, may I request you to join in for a selfie with the audience? Senthil, I'll let you take the lead. You're going to turn and take a selfie with the audience. All right, everybody smile. There's a lot to get in one picture, I see. Smile. Okay, thank you. We tried.